Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Hands on SAP Dev with Q Macro. That's me, DJ. We're here for episode 58. 58 sounds a lot higher than 57 for some reason. I'm not sure why. So yeah, welcome and thanks for joining. Good morning, Pierre. Good morning, Freddie. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for spending a bit of your Friday with us here on Hands on SAP Dev. What have we got in store? Good morning, Manuel. Shamit, good morning to you too. Wonderful to have you both, all of you. Right, so I've got my coffee, my SAP e-coffee cup. I've got a piece of chocolate and a biscuit, which is very crumbly, so I'm not going to eat it. Good morning, Napit. Nice to see you. Good morning, Dennis. Good morning. This is great. Great to see you all. So I think we've got a fairly intense hour ahead of us. I'm looking forward to this, although it is quite sort of hardcore, which is the reason why I sort of put that thing on LinkedIn, and I think I tweeted the picture last night with Motorhead tattoos. In fact, for those who know, I was modeling myself. Hey, howdy, Robert. I was modeling myself on Vivian from The Young Ones, a British comedy program, comedy series from the early 80s, I think it was. And he had sort of stars studied into his head. Anyway, there we go. So yeah, it's sunny. I'm working from home, like probably many of you as well, and I enjoy that very much anyway. I've got a little ding there. I don't know what that is, but anyway. Right, let's get started. Hey Andrew, good morning. Well, good evening to you, I guess. Good evening. I hope Friday's gone well for you. We're just about to start. Well, why don't I switch to the main scene? Morning, Tim. Good morning over there in Chorlton. Yeah, let me switch to the main scene, which it was a comedy, yes. Zatik, first time live watcher. You love to see it. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining live. It's great to see you here in the chat. It's always nice to get to know people through chat, of course, rather than just have you watch the recordings, which obviously are not as exciting, not as interactive anyway. So I'm going to close that little message there. I've got an excellent connection. Volker, Morgan, hope you're healthy as well. Sun in England, damn, where is the world going? Exactly, it's going downhill. It's going down the drain. Anil, good morning as well. This is great. Welcome everybody. I hope you're all fit and healthy. What was I going to say then? I can't remember. But yeah, we're going to cover. It's going to be fairly intense today. We're going to cover more OAuth stuff, because one of the things I've realised, and I think you've probably noticed this in the past few episodes and blog posts and things, that there are some fundamental things that we as technicians in the SAP world, developers and the like, really need to sort of understand and feel comfortable with. And as I, just like you, started to take that journey from the Neo environment on SAP Cloud Platform to Cloud Foundry, there are things that came at me that obviously I know about OAuth to a little bit. It's sort of come up in the past, but I've always sort of managed to avoid most of the detail, and it's always seemed a bit of a dark art. But the more you look into it, the clearer it becomes, and so that's what we're doing. I'm just going to recap on what we did last week, but before we do that, let me just. I started having a look to think, okay, well, what are we doing here? Last week on the live stream, we did. We're interacting with the workflow API, and we're still going to mess around with the workflow API today as well. Because it's a great API and it's an important service, and it's something that is protected by OAuth, so why not? And we used what's called the client credentials grant type, okay, which is a bit of a mouthful, and those words I just don't stick in my brain very well. I was trying to figure out why they weren't sticking in my brain, and I know there are other grant types, and I've also used the word flow instead of grant type, because people use that word as well. So there are different flows, there are different grant types. Earlier on, actually, in episode 51, which was a few weeks ago. Hey, Jotia, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you, and Sasha. My goodness me, Sasha. Yes, right in time. Talking of dark arts and Vim. I hope you're enjoying your Vim. Just wait till I get you onto Tmux as well. Anyway, welcome. Great to see you all. I was just the dark arts, and so I thought, okay, how do I make the phrase client credentials grant flow easier to say, but also B, stick in my brain? And there are other grant types. Okay, OAuth 2.0 grant types. There's the authorization code grant type, and if you look through here, it goes through, and it's quite a decent high level description. Hey Phil, good morning and good evening to you. G'day. Yes, g'day is sort of nice and generic. I like that. Yes, it's not a bad set of documentation as a high level, because it's got these these flow things here, these sort of swim, what do they call the swim lanes? I don't know. Anyway, so there's the authorization code grant type, there's the client credentials grant type. I'll scroll down even further. There's a resource owner password grant type, and then finally there's also the implicit grant type. So in this documentation there are 4 grant types for different scenarios, different contexts, and so on. Right. So I started looking to those. We last week used the client credentials grant type, which we'll recap for ourselves in a minute. In episode 51, which I've got a little link to the annotations blog post here, in episode 51, we were using, and slightly inadvertently, because at that time I have still no idea what I'm doing, but I had even less idea of what I was doing. I was using an authorization flow, a grant type, and that was the resource. I think I did mention it. That was a resource owner password grant type, or otherwise known as the password grant type. Okay, so that's what we were doing there. So have a look at that as well as a little bit of background, because I thought I had a bit of a OAuth. Why don't I look at the OAuth site? And the really interesting thing was that on the OAuth site, I was expecting to see this list of 4 grant types: authorization code, client credentials, resource owner password, sometimes also called just password, and implicit. And I didn't see them. I saw 4 different ones, 2 with the same authorization code and client credentials. That's a little bit bigger. But then device code, which is a bit of an edge case, that's related to, well, in fact, let's just open up that window there. That's related to browserless or input constrained devices. In my mind, I'm thinking of IoT devices, edge devices, and so on. So we're going to ignore that one for now. It's probably less interesting for us. And also the refresh token grant type. Now, the refresh token grant type is actually part of the flow that you have with the authorization code grant type, as it turns out. So we'll look at that shortly later on today. You're looking handsome. Nice to see you over the internet. Yes, we all look more handsome and more attractive over the interwebs, don't we? Maybe it's the camera, maybe it's the fact that I don't use a camera normally, so of course it's less of an extreme impact. This coffee's good today, and I've also got some Montezuma chocolate. It's quite nice. Anyway, but then I scrolled down and I saw those other 2 grant types I was looking for, implicit and resource owner password, and their legacy. Looking into it even further, I then followed some links to an IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force document that basically says, do not use resource owner password credentials grant. And also, it refers to the, there's another one here, where was it? Implicit grant. Implicit grant, it says we should not use there. So for those of you who read IETF documents and RFCs, request for comment documents, I do sometimes, it's quite exciting. RFC, I think RFC 2919, is it 2919? RFC 291, this is a bit of a digression, but RFC 2919, not 2919. I can't think of the number. RFC 2616 is HTTP, isn't it? Yes, it's HTTP. There's another one. Oh, is it RFC 2119? I'm just gonna make a guess for that one. Yes, there we go. 2119. Got my digits mixed up. this is almost like a meta document that describes words like should and must and could that are used in other documents, right? I don't know whether you know this or not, but anyway, so I think it's very interesting. So it describes these keywords and how important they are, and what the meaning behind those words are. So when you see in a document like this one, must not, wherever it must not, yeah, must not, that means basically on pain of death, do not use this. So it's very interesting to see. Anyway, we're not going to look at resource owner password anyway. We looked at it in episode 51. We're going to look at authorization code, which is probably the most common and the most relevant for us. Well, actually, equally with client credentials, but when there's a human involved, authorization code is the grant type that we need to use. Refresh tokens, yes, exactly. Oh, great. Okay, I'm glad you're interested in knowing more about how OAuth works, Phil, because I am too, and I have been. And as you know, I've been reading through this little, very thin OAuth book. I'm basically hacking around because that's the way I like to learn the best. So there we go. So that's a bit of context there. Anything else to show you there? No, actually, I think that's all. There we go. So let me just describe. Where are we here? Let me just move that way. There we go. Let me just describe where we left off last week. Okay, we've got. And I've actually just switched accounts on the Cloud Platform trial because I've got some issue this morning. I can't log in with my normal credentials, so I've just set up, or I'm using this temporary user, this P user that I set up to write to rewrite the workflow and Cloud Platform code jam content, focusing on Cloud Foundry. Okay, which I can send you a link to because it's all online as well. So I'll be looking to see if we can sort of somehow do like a code jam online. I mean, I'm talking to all my colleagues and everything to figure out how we can do that sort of thing. If you've got any ideas, then let us know. But anyway, where we left off last week was I've got a workflow service instance, right? And that workflow service instance is running. And there's also here, oh, what a surprise, timed out. There's also here, I've deployed already. It's very similar to what we had last week. I've just deployed two things here. There's an order process workflow definition, which we're not interested in. And there's a simple workflow definition, which we are interested in. All it does is start and that's it. Okay, we're not interested in workflows today, definitions today. We are interested in looking at them and creating instances of them, but we're not interested in messing around with workflow per se. So we've got those, and when you deploy a workflow definition from SAP Web IDE as an MTA module, a service key is generated for you, and that's just in case. I've been sort of talking to people internally to figure out why, because I don't really understand why that's the case. Because you've got a service key generally. Anyway, it's generated just in case the other service key is not there anymore, because of course these are sort of ephemeral. Or potentially ephemeral if you delete them. Anyway, so we've got these service keys there. That's really the only thing I wanted to show from a web browser perspective. Oh, I don't want to show that. That's my light stream with multiple going on there. So let's start. It's quarter past now, so we'll spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes looking at what we did last week really quickly, and also looking at an alternative to last week, and then we'll look at the authorization code, if that's okay. Online code jam, most welcome. Yeah, exactly. Clearly, it won't be a code jam as we know it because, okay, Freddie, have a great day at school. Stay safe and everything. I'll see you tomorrow about the Mother's Day cards. I've got some ideas. Anyway, for your mum. Yeah, and tell Lewis as well. Okay, so I can't remember what I was saying now. Anyway, what we've got here, I've logged in already to the endpoint, and I've authenticated with this user. The user is a Gmail user, qmacro plus workflow codejam at gmail.com. And if I look at the services there, we will see, there we go, there's qmacro at workflowcodejam.com. We'll see that we've got this workflow service instance. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. We've got, or SK, we can see those service keys that we briefly saw in the web browser. There, order process workflow credentials and simple workflow credentials. So what we'll do is we'll pick one of them, simple workflow credentials, and we'll grab the service key details, which will contain things that we need for our OAuth authentication flows and everything. So why don't we say that now? Let's say CF service key, what was it again? I can't remember the name now. It was simple workflow credentials, wasn't it? Yeah, there we go. CF service key work for the workflow service instance. We want the simple workflow credentials, and we'll save it into a file called keys.json. Okay, so let's have a quick look at that, because remember, I'm not a fan. I mean, I am a fan of the CF command line because it's a command line tool, but it's just so frustrating. Yes, there's a CF curl command, but that's completely different, and you have to remember a different set of endpoints and everything. It's not the same. Anyway, let's just fix that up. So there we go. We've got our content endpoint, which is not important, but what's important to us is this workflow REST URL. That's our API endpoint. But more importantly, we've got within this UAA section, we've got the client ID and the client secrets, and we've also got at the bottom here the API, the authorization server endpoint as well. Okay, so that's the endpoint that we want to hit when we do authorization calls. So in the OAuth grant type flows, you'll have like there's four things. Four things. Let's use the word thing. Four things. There's the resource owner, which is going to be a human. There's the client or the application, which is acting on your behalf in many cases. Or it might be an independent application in the case of client credentials flow, which we did last week, just a service application. There's the resource server that contains the resources that you want to access. And then there's the authorization server that you ask for tokens and delegate, use for delegation and everything. Okay, so that is the authorization server. Okay, so that's what we need to know. We've got those in there now. And I did tweet yesterday, I slightly updated this SKV, this sort of helper function, service key values, so that I can specify not only the value I want, but also the file that it's in. Because essentially, in these flows, you're going to be dealing with two sets of JSON. You're going to be dealing with a service key JSON that I'm going to call in keys, and you're going to be dealing with the sort of the token JSON, which I'm going to call token, right? So I can say now, I can say skv keys and then UAA.url, and that should give us the endpoint, the root endpoint for the authentication server. Good morning, Max. Yes, we are hungry learners. In fact, I just had to put a piece of chocolate in my mouth. So hungry in double senses of the word. We've got that. Also, what we did was we started looking at the scopes and the authorities required to be attached to or related to the actual workflow service instance. What we'll do from the start, CF update, you'll remember this from last week, hopefully, update service workflow. We'll update the workflow service and give it basically I'll go back to this YAML in a minute, but we'll update it and give it no authorities, so that when we use the client credentials, which of course then require scopes defined against the workflow instance, it's not going to work for us. We're deliberately doing that, okay? So that's all fine. Now, what we'll do is we'll follow what we did last week for the client credentials grant, which was, first of all, to make sure we have basic authentication details, being the client ID and the client secret, and I've just put those in there just before we started. So this is the client ID and this is the client secret, and that's our authentication server machine name, which we saw just now. Okay, we've got those. So now we can say curl -n, okay, use netrc. Let's do it on separate lines. Of the backslashes, let me press enter, new line. We'll have a, do a verbose, okay. And then what we did as well was we said, I want to deliberately use the post method, okay, which we'll come back to shortly. And now what we need to do is specify the endpoint, which is the result of skb keys ua.url, right? So that's the basic endpoint. But then, of course, for the client credentials flow, we're going to ask for a token, and the specific endpoint for asking for a token was OAuth token, right? And what we specify is what's it called? I've got it written down here. Grant type. Grant type equals client credentials. Okay. I'm deliberately typing it all in. I'm not having anything saved so that we can make the same mistakes and everything. Okay, so grant type client credentials. That's what we're going to do. Let's see what happens. Oh, also, I want to put it into a file called token.json, and assuming it's going to work, right? Then we can have a look inside. And oh yes, space as well. There we go. NV bang. Okay, so that worked. That was very quick. But basically, we can see just up here that we got 200 OK. Okay, and also notice that the authorization was sent, an authorization header, authorization basic, and that's the MyBase64 encoded username : password, which not my username and password, it's the client ID and the client secret. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Okay, so what we've got in token.json is what we saw last week. In fact, what I'll do is client credentials, move token.json there, and in fact, let's create a symbolic link to here. So we'll just work within this directory now. So this is our client credentials directory. So we can say now JQ pretty print the token stuff. We can see there that we've got the access token that we've given. And we get a token type, which is a bearer token, and we get an expires, which we've talked about before. And also we get this scope thing. Okay, we'll look at the scope later, but the scope is effectively an indication, rough indication of the sort of access that we have. Okay, and in fact, if we look at skb token scope, we see that, and then we can actually split that, can't we? Split. Translate the spaces into new lines and then sort it. So we can see that we've got stuff relating to deploying stuff, not relating to do anything else. Okay, and that's partially as a result of removing the rest of the authorities from that workflow instance. So now we've got this token with this access token, skb token access token. Okay, we've got that. Now we can use that to go and try and list the workflow definition. So why don't we do that? So the what we want to do is say curl. We don't need the -n anymore. We're not trying to use basic authentication with the client ID and client secret. We've got a token now, so we use that in the authorization bearer skb JSON. Token access token. There we go. And all we want to do is say we want to go to the endpoint, the API endpoint, which is going to be go and get me the skb from the keys, and we want the endpoint. I can't remember what it's called now. See client credentials. Let's have a look. Keys in the keys. It's up here, isn't it? Oh yeah, there you go. Workflow REST URL. Okay. So we want the endpoint dot workflow REST URL. Okay, and that's the root of the workflow API REST endpoint. So it's /workflow service /REST, as you can see at the end there. So if you remember from last week, we need v1 workflow definitions. So show me the workflow definitions. Okay, I think that's going to give us some JSON output. So let's have a look at that. Now, in fact, also, if you're wondering, we can sort of, we can also silence that sort of, percentage download progress thing with a -s silence. Okay, so there we go. We get an error message, and that's because, of course, we cleared the credentials. We cleared the authorizations. We cleared the scopes from the workflow instance. So what we add that back. So we say, for example, CF update. In fact, update service authorities workflow definition get, wasn't it? I think that was right. So we'll do that. But the interesting thing is, come on. But the interesting thing is, if we use the same access token, we're going to get the same issue. So of course, it makes sense that we have to go and get a new token, go and ask for a new token. So we go into the same endpoint. We're going to see the same client credentials, same client ID and client secret. Let's ask for a new token, and then use that new token as the bearer to go now try and get the workflow definitions. And there we go. Okay, so we've now given ourselves access by placing the authority, specifying that authority in the workflow instance context, in the service key context. Well, not the service key context, in the workflow instance context, that gives us the access to see that stuff, right? So that's cool. However, you've all gone very quiet, by the way. Let me know if this is making any sense. I hope it is. I mean, this is sort of thing what we did last week. But the crazy thing is, that last week I didn't notice that I was using post, and I don't really need to use post, right? So let's get rid of this and just do a get. Okay, the default in curl is get. Okay, so we can also use get. The OAuth 2.0 spec and the implementations of that spec. For example, the implementation in the authentication server that's provided for SAP Cloud Platform Cloud Foundry. That supports lots of different ways of doing it. Tim Toady, in the Perl community, there's more than one way to do it. So we can do that as well. Okay, so we did a get, not a post. Okay, and if we look at the tokens there, we get a token. Okay, so that's fine. Notice also, Phil, notice silence. Yes. Okay, Falca, bye. Have a great day. Look after yourself. Thanks for joining, by the way. So that's interesting. But also, Phil, you mentioned, what did you mention before? Oh, refresh tokens. Yes. I think you joined just after we looked at the website where the OAuth 2.0 website specified refresh token as an actual sort of independent grant type or a flow. There's no concept of refresh tokens in the client credentials grant. Okay, so a client that's got a token, an application, a sort of independent application, can't ask for another token, can't refresh that token if it expires, whatever. However, tokens that are given through an authorization code grant, which we're doing in a minute, you can. Okay, so that's fine. Not only can you do a get, if we went back, we can also go back to using a post, right? But why don't we edit that? Okay, this command, we can do the post. In fact, we'll do this here, right? So instead, we don't need the grant type. Yeah, let's get rid of that. So we're not sending anything in the URL, but we can send some data. There we go. Grant type equals client credentials and client ID equals skb keys UAA.client ID and client secret equals, I'm just making this up, sort of skb keys UAA.e client secret. There we go. So we're now passing these property value pairs in the payload. -d in curl says send this in the body, right? Let's keep B. And also, we're saying don't use NetRC. Don't authenticate with basic authentication from NetRC. So we're not authenticating with, basic authentication. We're just sending this information in the body of a post, which is also nicer because, of course, this is HTTPS, so it all goes sort of TLS encoded, encrypted. So let's see. I think client secrets, SKB keys, I think that's right. There we go. Okay. By the way, if you're wondering, you can set your bash shell to allow you to edit with VI, edit the command, and then save it, and it just goes off. It's especially really nice for really complex commands. Set -o VI is the thing. Set -o VI. Anyway, that's a story for another time. Okay, so hey, Ronnie, good morning. Did I see you today already? Good morning, Ronnie. So that's that. And we've also got an answer, okay? And that token file, 830, yeah, that was just created now. So we can send a post request, but not send anything in the body. We can, with basic authentication, we can send a GET request with basic authentication and the client credentials grant type in the URL parameter, or we can send a body with all the parameters, client ID, client secret, and what's it called again? Grant type in the body of a post. Bearing in mind that curl beautifully, in a slightly old-fashioned way, default content type header is application xwww form URL encoded. Okay, right. It's 8:30, which is just right because I want to move on now. Given that, I want to move on to the different flow, which is the authorization code flow. And this is where, in fact, is it worth going to this thing here? I think it is actually. This is where a human is involved. So the client credentials grant type is where you don't have a human involved, and it's just basically a service acting on its own behalf. In fact, we could show that even more precisely, but if we give ourselves what was the workflow workflow instance start, is that the one we need in the API hub, which I can't log on to right now because there's all sorts of issues with authentication with SAP ID service I've got today, but I'm pretty sure, is it workflow instance start? Max, you're on the call. It is workflow instance start, isn't it? It's workflow instance, and it wasn't start, it wasn't create, it was start. So let's give ourselves that authority as well, and remember that this is an absolute set of authorities, not an addition. So if I'd have just sent workflow instance start, it would have replaced the whole authorities with just that one. So now what we'll do is we'll say we'll need to get a new token, won't we? We'll need to get a new token. So let's get a new token into token.json. And now we'll say v1, there we go, v1, but we want workflow. We also need to send data as well, don't we? Data definition ID simple. Why don't I edit that as well? There we go, it's easier, right? Definition ID simple workflow. Oops. Simple workflow, and the context is I don't know, number 42. Okay, that's the context, and that is the end of that. There we go. There we go. We want that. That's fine. So now with this new bearer token, we're going to try and instantiate workflow instant start. Thank you very much indeed. Workflow instant start. Robert, you got to run really much. Okay, stay safe, everybody, and thanks, Robert, for joining. It's hardcore, isn't it? I wish I'd kept the tattoo on my forehead. It was quite good. It didn't really exist. So we're now going to try and create a workflow instance, start a workflow instance. Thank you, Max. Yeah, workflow instance start, which I think is what I gave myself. Definition ID is that. So we need to pass, of course, as the payload, the definition ID in the JSON and a context, which could be anything, right? Oh, I've forgotten the closed bracket then. Why didn't anybody tell me I'd forgotten the closed bracket? I think that's right. Yes, context. Workflow definitions, yes. Oh no, workflow instance. Oh, yes, right. Instances, workflow instances. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. As I was just saying, the default content type is form URL encoded. But what we want is, of course, the header content application JSON, don't we? There we go. Let's try that. There we go. Now, so that's created a workflow instance of the simple workflow. Let's have a quick look at that, actually. Where's my browser? No, that one there. Which one is it? Home. Let's go to monitor workflows. Timed out again. This is so now if we have a look at our simple workflow, look at the instances, and also, of course, we need to filter because that's a super quick instance of definitely finished already. There we go. Now, the interesting thing is, and this is the point I wanted to do this for, the interesting thing is that who created this instance? It wasn't me, DJ. It was that service, our curl command, basically using the credentials that it was granted, or using the ID that was related to the credentials that were granted to it, i.e. itself as in the client ID, which is why we see this here, which is, of course, not great. Okay, which is why it's important for us to understand this authorization code grant, which will associate me, the human, djadams@sap.com or whatever, with the authorization, the bearer token. So remember that. Now, let's just minimize that again. As you can say that, yes, started by SB clone, blah, 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 which is the client ID. Now, if we have a look at this nice little diagram here, there's me, and this is the authentic authorization code. The diagram here says basically, I as a human ask the application to do something on my behalf. I'm going to be delegating authorities to it. It then says, okay, well, go over here, please, human, and authenticate yourself with, and potentially give me, access to the right scopes if that's a part of the flow. You'll probably see this in other contexts as well as cloud platform like, Google, for example. Do you want this script to do this? Yes, please. That's me. I've signed in. Done. So the user gets sent to the authorization server. They sign in. They authenticate with their own personal DJ user ID and password. And an authorization code is generated by the authorization server and sent back, in a redirect. And that code is then grabbed by the application. And then the application says, I got this code here, which is valid only for a short amount of time. Please, can I have, in exchange, an access token? And the authorization server says, yeah, there you go. Here's the access token. And also, Phil Cooley, not only here's the access token, but here's a refresh token if you want to refresh it later. So that is, hey, Alex, welcome. OAuth at 8 a.m. That is such a good idea for a t-shirt. I've been looking to see what else I want. I don't want to do another t-shirt. OAuth at 8 a.m. Brilliant. I had a friend, Matthew Allen, who wrote BusyBox, didn't he? And he also wrote the sort of X window meta system called Zephyr. His email address was breakfast@10.am, which I thought was wonderful. Anyway, so we're going to do this now. We're going to do this flow. So let's see what happens. What we need to do is we need to why don't we do this? Let's have a look. And this is why it's actually documented. Earlier this morning, we noticed that the resource owner password grant type and the implicit grant type were sort of deprecated, which explains also why in the SAP help portal, we only get documentation for the client credentials grant flow and the authorization code grant flow. Okay, that explains things. Oh yeah, it all makes sense now, right? So what we've got is a sort of a slightly longer set of requirements. Okay, so first of all, we need to send a request to get an authorization code from the authorization server. And notice that instead of /OAuth/token, where we directly saying, can I have a token? the endpoint path for the authorization server is OAuth authorized, not OAuth token. Okay, and what we send is just the client ID and the requirement to say, give me a code as a response. Okay, notice that because we're sending this fairly long and ugly client ID in the URL path, as in the query path part of the URL, we've got a URL encoded. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, let's do that first and see what happens. So let's go down here and say we've still got our key. In fact, let's go up here now. Make the authorization code. I'm going to spell it the US way, even though it pains me. So now we've got. There we go, and we'll say link, symbolic link to the keys to here as well. So we're starting off there. So now we've got, let's see, skv keys ua.url. So there we go, we've got that. That's where we want to append our OAuth authorize thing. And I've also got this URL encode little utility, which I grabbed from Stack Overflow somewhere. Where is it? It's not in there. Where is it? Oh, it's in my where is it? Oh, of course, bash aliases. Bash _ aliases. Come on, DJ, what's wrong with my fingers? So there's URL encode and decode, which I'm using, which is fine. You know, let's just use that. Okay, so now, when we start out, well, in fact, all we need to do is echo out the URL. Okay, so it's echo. What's going on? Echo. So we want the UA.url, the endpoints, the authentication server endpoint / OAuth authorize, right? And then we want client ID equals, and we want the URL encoded version, URL encode of the client ID, right? Keys. Oh, I've just noticed there. Keys. There we go. Of the UA.client ID, URL encode of that, right? Followed by, and what's it called? Response type equals code. Give me a code. Now that should, what's going on? SKV key, echo SKV keys, URL. What am I doing wrong here? URL encode. Oh, sorry. There we go. Typo. Multiple levels of indirection. No, indirection is not the right word. But anyway, multiple levels of. Okay. Okay, Alex, URL. Yeah, Alex is saying URL decoding the terminal is useful. I use that a lot when working with that connect. Yes, well, SKV is just a really simple little function that we wrote last week in the last week's live stream, which allows us to access quite easily a given property in the JSON hierarchy from one of the JSON files that we've got. So we've got here, in fact, we got it there, right? We've got here our keys.json, which is our service keys from the workflow instance on SAP Cloud Platform, right? So I want to be able to grab UAA.client ID, for example. And also up here, we've got the, down here, we've got things like the token. We want to grab the token as well. So I can say, for example, SKV service key value from the keys set, UA.client ID, and that'll just give me that in a raw form. That uses JQ, right? That's all it is. Just a convenience thing. So now we've got, I think that's what you're asking. Yeah. Now we've got this URL that we, as a human, need to request. So let's do that. Let's open up a new thing, stick that in there. And what do we get? But we get a challenge to authenticate ourselves, me as a human DJ, and I'm using this QMacro plus workflow codegem@gmail.com because of some other things this morning. I'm going to authenticate, and That's fine. This site cannot be reached because it's the default redirect target, which is localhost 8080. Fine, we can specify a redirect target. We haven't got an app, right, to redirect to. But what's interesting is this code here. Now we use that code, okay, down here, request an access token with that code. So why don't we do that? Let's go back up here. We want the token, grant type authorization code and code. So now here we'll say, let's see if we can get one of those. There we go. Grant type. No, let's do it from curl -v. SKB UAA keys UAA.url. We want the URL OAuth token, right? And then we want, what was it? Grant type token OAuth. Sorry, what is it? OAuth token grant type equals authorization with a Z code and code equals that. Okay, I think that's all we need. Combine the parameters with the token endpoint of the authorization server. Oh yes, authenticate with the basic authentication. So in fact, we need to authenticate with our client ID and client secret so we can use our netrc values. There we go. What I forgot to do was save it in a token thing, so I'll do that again because you can't use that code again. If I do that again, we get bad request. Okay, that code is a one-time use only code. So let's do that again. Let's go to here. In fact, let's go to here. Response type equals code. There we go. That's the one we want, isn't it? We want that URL. And we want to do that again. And we've already authenticated now. This browser's got the cookie context. So we get another code, okay, which is there. And now we can try that again, which is that. And we get an OK. Okay, so hopefully now we've got something in token. Well, we have. Not only have we got something in token, which is exciting, but also, Phil Cooley, I'm looking at you, we get a refresh token as well, okay? But not only do we get a refresh token, if you saw the scope information from, in fact, we've still got it, haven't we? If we have a look in here, if we go back to the client credentials token file and look at the scope, in fact, we'll do that with JQ instead, right? JQ client token there, we'll see that the scope is a lot smaller. We've got a lot fewer things. If we look at this scope here, token, in fact, if we say SKB, and this is another, so here's another example, Alex, of using SKB. I can say SKB token scope, which will give us that. And then we can say, for example, well, let's, but I should do a little thing here as well for that, shouldn't I? Oops. New line and sort. Sorry, what's going on here? I'm getting too excited. There we go. Sort. We get all these scopes, okay? Because these scopes are related to me, not to the workflow instance, not to the authorities we gave to the workflow instance. If you if we have a look, can we have a look? Where's my thing there? If we have a look at the if we have a look at the security information, if you remember last week, I gave myself a role collection. Where are we? In the trial organization and sub account. If we look at the role collection, I give myself the workflow role collection, and in that role collection, I stuck in all these roles: admin, content viewer, developer, initiator, participant, viewer. And the direct result of that is that I get all these scopes here. There we go, all those. Now, because we've got those scopes, and now because we've also got an access token, which we can use, right? It's SKB token. Oh, sorry, it's called access token, isn't it? Which is there. we can now try the same thing, which is to instantiate a new, or instantiate a new instance. I don't like saying that. Create a new instance of that simple workflow definition, right? So, so Phil, does that mean we can only get a refresh token with authorization code option? Yes. So with the client credentials grant type, you don't get the chance to refresh. You don't get a refresh token. There's no refresh token facility as part of that flow. It's only when you, because I suppose because theoretically it's just as easy for the client to request another access token from scratch, right? I think what it is that the tokens last less long from an authorization code perspective, because a human might want to remove that delegated authority, you know, for whatever security reason. So that there's this idea of, I want to be able to refresh this, but that refresh token also has a lifetime, right? Anyway, great question though. Yeah, this is I think it's fascinating. So we've got this token. So now theoretically, right, I can use that as a bearer token. Let's have a look. Is that what we want to do? Let's just have a quick look. I can use that bearer token, which is there, because don't forget, I'm inside our authorization code directory, which has got the token information from that flow that we've just done. So theoretically, let's just go for 43. I should be able to run exactly the same call. i.e., I'm sending JSON as the payload. I'm using my new token that was granted to, well, that was granted on the basis of this authorization code flow, which involved me authenticating and granting and having my ID associated with it. So now let's just go for it. And it worked. And notice, I think the most exciting thing, or the most important thing, is that the started by is me, not the client ID. Okay, so let's have a quick look at that in the monitor. Where is it? There we go. Monitor workflows. And I think as it refreshes, we've got to refresh the filter as well. So let's just, because these workflows are so simple, these complete straight away. So let's select the completed ones. And there we go. So we've got some that we've been testing before. Those are the order process ones. We don't want the order process ones. We want the simple workflow ones. There we go. So there's the one we were testing before, created by, or started by, started. Yeah, I suppose, Max, you sent me that workflow instance start. The verb is to start an instance. Yeah, why don't I say that? Let's start a new instance, not create a new instance. So it was started by SB clone, and that was using the bearer token that was given to us in the context of the client credentials grant, as in it was related only to the actual application, not to me. This one, it says it was started by basically the ID that relates to me, the human, which is the resource owner in that sort of flow thing. So there we go. There was one more thing that I wanted to quickly check on and talk about, because well, actually, yeah, there's two more things, well, loads more things, but one of the things relating to client credentials grant type was if I wanted to have separate apps, separate clients, right? Client, app, same thing in this context, with separate access rights, how would I do it? And the answer lies, of course, well, not of course, but the answer lies in having multiple instances of the workflow service. Okay, I'll be digging into this a little bit internally at SAP and asking some people who know what they're talking about. I've, as usual, no idea what I'm talking about, but they've been telling me that yes, if you create a second workflow instance, you can give that, of course, a different set of authorities, a different set of scopes, and then you use the client ID and client secret from that particular instance, either from an application binding or from a service key for the one application, and for the other application you don't, right? But just rather than go there, just to underline this whole thing, let's go into here and modify this workflow role collection and see. Let's see what happens. I mean, we've got, we can look at the scopes as well. In fact, we'll look at the scopes now. We've got in our token scope, right? There we go there. We've got all this stuff, and we've got workflow instance start there, right? We can see it just there. So would it be interesting just to make sure we know exactly what's going on by removing workflow, what do you reckon it is? Workflow initiator. Let's remove the workflow initiator role from the role collection. Alex, we have an OAuth 2 OIDC workflow for open files. I'll send it to you later to see if you. Yes, definitely. Thank you, Alex. Yes. I just love the way that the wonderful world in which you move, Alex, is, not converging, but, really nicely overlapping. All the stuff I'm learning from you, which is a tremendous amount, so thank you for that, is sort of overlapping and helpful in our role, as we sort of expand out into the cloud and Cloud Foundry and, do all this stuff. So I think it's great. So, and thank you for joining. Brilliant. So I've just removed that role, workflow initiator, from that role collection, which is assigned to me, right? So I will now generate a new URL. We can probably do the same thing, right? Authorize. Yeah, there we go. There's a new URL. And I suppose I can use that incognito mode because I want to, I guess I'll need to re-authenticate. So let's do that. There we go. So let's just open up a new tab here and put that in there and see what happens. Oh, okay, no. We need to re-authenticate. Let's do that again. Well, no, well, actually, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let's use that code first. Code, oops. I always forget that when I do that, I'm not in VI mode. There we go. Code equals that. We got I've got some new token. What time is it now? 8:57, 8:57. Yes, okay, so SKV token scope. See, I'll do that, there we go. Workflow instance start is still there, so I think I need to re-authenticate. So, yes, I'm just wondering if I go, wrong thing here. Let's do that. No, not that. What's it called? Where is it? I'll just go down here and grab my thing. Let's generate another one. It's actually the same URL each time, isn't it? There we go. Type equals code. In fact, why don't we go to here, authorize, and see what we get. There we go. No client with requested ID null. But hopefully now, we can get to the cookies and get rid of them. So now if I do the whole URL, I missed out the H. There we go. Yes, we're asked to authenticate again. Okay, so if I hit log on, we get a code here, which is fine. And now let's do that again, as usual. Where is it? No, not that one. There we go, code. Okay, and now let's have a look at the scopes. Yes, so if we have a look now, oops, sorry, there we go. Start That's down, that's up there, but down here at the bottom, we don't get it. So we have actually successfully removed the ability to start a new workflow instance by removing the role from the role collection that was assigned to me, DJ, the human, partly human, that is related to the scopes that are given to this bearer token. There we go. So if we try that now, Phil, let's try one now. Let's try and create a thing. Yeah, user does not have sufficient privileges, which is great, which is what we expect. So it's 9 o'clock. My goodness me, that went really fast. Thinking you will get an error when creating workflow. Yes, I did. Yes, not authorized. Sorry, Phil, you were ahead of me. Yes, I did. Shall we spend a couple of minutes trying to refresh that token? Is it worth it? Can you stay around for another 5 minutes? Because I know, Phil, you're asking about that. So why don't we do that now? So let's have a look at what we've got in token. We've got a refresh token. Okay. So yeah, let's go through the refresh. Why not? So the refresh flow is also described here. That's a thumbs up. I'll do that. So here we go. Here we go. To request a new access token for a given refresh token, send a post request to the same token endpoint as. So there we go. So it's very, very similar. And I guess this is why. Yes, this is why. If we have a look in the OAuth grant types, the refresh token is listed as an actual grant type rather than a sort of like a child of a grant type. So, so that's quite interesting, isn't it? Get rid of that, There we go. So all we need to do is send the refresh token, and let's see. So let's say here, there we go. Let's edit that. So we want, we still need to authenticate, and remember that our, no, we don't want that. Remember that we've got our credentials, the client ID and the client secret that we need to use to authenticate that with basic authentication with the client ID and the client secret. That's still a thing, and that's still valid. And we're using that with the netrc option here. We go there, and it's now saying is it authorized? No, token. We're asking for a token, aren't we? Token. The grant type is refresh token, if I could spell, and the token, is it called a refresh token? Refresh token equals SKB token refresh token. I think it's called refresh. Is it called refresh token? Yes, it is. Okay. So let's see what happens. Let's put it in refreshed token, right? So we don't clobber anything else. I think that's what we need to do. Let's try. We got an OK, 200 OK. Let's have a look. Yeah, we've got a refresh token. There we go. So now let's just make sure that, oh yeah, we're going to get an authorization. Oh, we've still got the ability to do a workflow definition thing. So let's use that token for that. V1 work definition. There we go. We're using that token that's been refreshed. Look at the workflow definitions. Why am I getting a thing there? Let's have a look. Oh no, that's we don't want to post. We want the definitions. There we go. The access token. Is it that one? There we go. There. I was using the post. I want to do the get. There we go. So we now successfully use that new access token that we got through the refresh token grant type to go and make a call successfully to the API. Which link? Which link are you looking for, Phil? Oh yeah, the link to the SAP Health Portal. Is it that one? Yeah, there we go. Okay, brilliant. Thank you all so much for joining today and making it exciting and great chat and everything. Really enjoyed that, and also thank you, Alex, for coming on board and joining, and also giving me an idea for a t-shirt. OAuth 8 AM. That is so. I'm so going to Spreadshirt right now. So have a great Friday. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week. Don't forget, next week we got an extra live stream on Wednesday afternoon. My friend and colleague Kevin Musig is coming on and talking to us and showing us the iOS SDK 5.0 support for Catalyst. All sorts of wonderful stuff that he's going to tell us about and show us. So join. Thanks very much indeed, and goodbye.